So Mahalia, it's a real pleasure to have you on. I'm really glad, as we're talking before recording. There's so many different areas I want to talk about today. Maybe to start is how did you get interested in film and film art? Is something you always were passionate about?
So, thank you, Nectarios, for inviting me to have this conversation with you. It's really a pleasure, and I really look forward to spending the next little while with you and all your listeners. So, thank you again. And I would say that my love of the arts and of filmmaking is really embedded in storytelling. And I would say that it started from the very beginning within my family. I would tell you that both my parents are great storytellers, and because we have such a rich family history, um, every conversation was embedded in stories and in my parents wanting to inculcate to me and my siblings. I'm the youngest of six kids, to really inculcate into us um, their own story, their own journey, and how it helped inform the values that they wanted to impart upon us and the principles that they held very, very close to their heart, and how they really raised us to have a life of purpose, a life where we think of fulfilling our dreams and our ambitions, but that we also keep track of how do we give back? How do we serve as engaged citizens of the world? And so it is really through storytelling within my family that I became very passionate about arts and culture and media and the power of a story. How there's a story behind everything, um, even numbers, even data can tell a story. So that was my first introduction, I would say, and that informed how I've evolved in, namely, the creative industries. So whether it be through the spoken word scene, whether it be through even fashion, whether it be through visual arts, literature, documentary, short film, fiction, television, animation, and now with the evolution of technology being in the XR realm, the common denominator in all of that has always been my interest and my passion for storytelling.
Yeah, I find that fascinating because it's like if you think back to the Stone Age, it's like the power of a campfire story, right? Like
Yes.
that's how culture stories were passed along, and before the written word.
Hmm.
So it is embedded in everything, and that's the way I think people remember stories more than, like you said, charts and Excel sheets.
Indeed.
So it's still something that's embedded in our like monkey DNA essentially, right? Like how we remember storytelling. Maybe to like as a curious question, any particular stories that you remember from your childhood that your parents taught you that still stick with you today?
Yes. The biggest story that stays with me is how my parents fled dictatorship in Haiti. My family is from Haiti. I was born in Canada, um, and how my parents had to flee, had to leave the country, and that the family had to separate in that sense, and that there was reunification, and that them leaving Haiti and then spending a few years in Africa, in Congo, to be more specific, uh, and having kids there as well, and then leaving Congo and moving to Canada. Uh, that story is the most significant one, and that has informed my life path, my career, my passions, what drives me, and what has helped develop in me that sense of how can I make a difference? How can I use my voice? How can I use my influence? How can I use my tools as a storyteller, as a producer, as a strategist, as a volunteer, being involved in various communities? How can I try to make a difference and have an impact? So it was very much informed by these unusual circumstances that led my family to make life changing choices.
It's yeah, it sounds like such a harrowing story, and story in the sense of like it really happened, it's real life, and it sounds like it infused you, like it, like almost with like a moral obligation to want to do better, to do more, just having lived, what having lived with what your parents lived through, and then you're like how blessed we are now. It's like, like it's Canada, it's pretty chill despite all, the beefs that we get. Like it's not Syria, it's not Haiti, it's not a third world country. Like we're pretty well off. It's a rich country. So I like how that is kind of giving you a moral compass, and like you said, a deep sense of purpose to want to do more.
Yes, I do think that in all of that, the idea of displacement, the impact of displacement, and how that challenge can be empowering in a sense, because what it gave my family was this sense of fighting to carve their place in society. So, in this sense, in Canadian society, um, fighting to contribute, to carve out a space for us, for their children, to grow within Canadian society, Quebec society, and to carve out our place and choose our path and find opportunities that speak to us and really develop to our truest form and to really be able to live out our dreams.
There's so many different areas. I find it's like we started with like the big heavy stuff up front. It's like it kind of reminds me also, my parents' journey, leaving like poverty in Greece, coming here in the '70s, and like sure, we didn't grow up super rich, but it was not, it's not like my parents still worry about like, do you have enough food, like to eat?
Mm,
Pretty sure we're okay, Bob. Like the grocery store is open, but they live through, in their childhood periods of like not having food on the table and eating only X times a week, and it's like, yeah. So I kind of feel privileged in that. I like how you then transform this into a passion for arts and storytelling and like across different types of media. And like obviously today, like you said, like the connectivity has given us basically this huge canvas. So
mhm.
talk about a little bit about ED Films. Like what is, you mentioned before, I'm looking at my notes here, XR Realm. What is that?
So, E Films is a boutique animation and tech studio. We're based in Montreal. We're small yet mighty and very creative. So, we work in spaces of animation and technology, and we're really focused on helping makers and empowering makers to have tools that really empower them and enable them to create their own stories. And so that's why what's really wonderful about our offering is this idea that within our art and tech lab, we look at what are the challenges that our in-house makers encounter, and through the development of technology and of tools, how do we create solutions that we can use in house, but that we can also make available through our online store to other makers from anywhere in the world?
Interesting. And on what platforms do you give these tools for creators? Is it purely in terms of film, or just curious as to like what is the platform that you guys are building?
Yeah, so it's a variety of tools that are available on through our online store, and many of the challenges that makers will encounter have to do with how do you create high quality images, but in perhaps in the fraction of the time that it would take with traditional tools that are available to these creators. And so where we come in is that we're able to offer tools that streamline the creation pipeline for those makers.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, and can you give us a sense of the scale, like how many makers are using the platform? You said you're small but mighty. So I want to like I'm going to steal that line. It's like, we're small but we're mighty. So
Well, over the years, ED Films has really built up quite the online community of fellow makers, and we're very community oriented, and we really connect with them all through like our tutorials that really give them a clear sense of, oh, what was the challenge that their team dealt with, and how can I see visually like how they dealt with it and how they used that solution that was at hand. Um, and so we have pretty much like a global audience, I would say.
That's wild. That's wild. Again, get to the power of like having connectivity in the internet. You can reach everyone, uh,
Absolutely.
and obviously with what you guys are doing, it sounds very interesting for makers and very apropos. Where like it's this whole notion of the creator economy. That's kind of buzzy, but it's true, right? There's a bunch of people that are looking to create. The tools have been democratized to be able to create, right? Like I can create like film, movies, images, TikToks, etc., much more easily than ever before.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the technology has certainly, as you said, democratized access and the possibility to create and to build your own business, right? Like to be your own entrepreneur, and to develop and position whatever it is that you're creating within the landscape in whatever industry it is, and to really showcase via access to technology and the various platforms that there are, to really showcase what's your it factor, what's the added value, how are you offering up a service, a solution, a story, an original idea. Uh, how are you you're able to position yourself in that way now. So definitely there is access. Now, of course, there are aspects of it all that still need to be worked on, because access to technology is not necessarily everyone has it. There are still corners of this world where the connectivity is not at the level that you and I have the privilege of benefiting from here in North America. So that definitely needs to be worked on, and I'm very thankful that there are global organizations out there that work on that aspect of how do we genuinely democratize technology and make it accessible to everyone, including the most vulnerable.
We were speaking before about the how you work in the creative arts, right? This whole notion, and I think in Montreal is pretty good for this, right? In terms of like creativity and
Yes,
like building really big global businesses in this space.
yes.
And then that intersection of leadership and creativity, right? We're riffing about how do you be a leader in a creative domain, right? Which is not the same as other industries. So I'm curious to hear you riff a little bit about this concept of leadership in a creative spaces.
Wow, I would tell you that it's it's a space in which you need to wear many hats. Um, there are a lot of in the creative industries. There are a lot of creators that are also entrepreneurs and that are also storytellers. So a lot of people in the creative industries, again, like I said before, they wear many hats. So what does it mean to be a leader in that space in this time of, as as is often said, this time of a great reckoning? What does that mean? And what I can say to that is that I see it as a time of great opportunity. I see it as a time of great opportunity to um, really capitalize on technology, not just for the sake of technological advancement, but also to zoom out and take a look at what is going on out there. Because with what's happened with the pandemic, with what's happened with looking at issues around climate change, issues around racism, around equity, inclusion, and belonging, no one can really turn a blind eye to any of it across any industry whatsoever. And so, therefore, what does leadership look like in this time, as we're being told, is this time of reckoning? And what are the opportunities? And where I see the opportunity whether it be the creative industry or any industry, is to not to stay the course by being uniquely focused on the bottom line, but it's zooming out and seeing the through line from how can creation support and entrepreneurship support having a purpose, having an impact, helping to find solutions for these big challenges that no one can ignore and that towards which everyone has a responsibility in order to ensure that we not only survive but thrive, and not just in our own respective bubbles but around the globe.
Yeah, I think it's a very nice way to look at it, right? You mentioned we've like the joke is we've used the word unprecedented like how many times the past years? Like how many times the word unprecedented, like does it have to be unprecedented before it becomes precedented?
Yeah, yeah. Did you see? I think it was early in the pandemic. Did you see that ad that an agency put together where they put clips of the repetition of all those buzzwords that were used in the first wave of the pandemic to show like how the ad copy like was it was like the same 10 to 12 words that were being used and it's just quite hilarious. But yes, you're right. It's like, yeah, the
Yeah,
buzzwords,
there's
yes.
there's a few interesting different strings. I don't know the video, but I'll find it and link to it. I find there's a few interesting different strings to pull on from what you're saying, Mahalia. Like in terms of like purpose, like having an impact. I find it such an important topic of like just working on big problems versus working on small things. So it's
Hmm.
like if you work on a bigger problem, you'll have a much bigger impact. Right? This notion of working on 10x problems, and I think today it's kind of been shown where if you work on big things, you can actually achieve big success, right? So, like, I think there's a few
Hmm.
pretty big examples of like, hey, we could, like a private space company. It's like, who would have thought of that? Like 15 years ago. Now it's like
Hmm.
sending rockets to space pretty regularly. And then I'll say one story. I think that's like going back to your notion of storytelling is one of my favorite stories. Like, if you're familiar with the story of Roger Bannister in
No, do tell.
the 4 Minute Mile. So it's this gentleman, 1953, Oxford, England, he's a racer. He runs like marathons and sprints, and he essentially at the time it was believed that it was impossible for man for humankind to essentially run faster than the 4 minute mile. And then one Sunday, this gentleman essentially beat it 3 minutes 58 seconds,
Hmm.
and showed the world that it was possible. But the most interesting part of the story is what happened next. So do you know what happened after he beat it?
No, do tell.
You want to guess? So then, and over the next 2 years, 16 other people beat that record. Right? So it's like, what happened that day? Was there some like breakthrough in innovation or shoe technologies? No, it was just one person that showed that what you thought was impossible actually is doable, right? So it kind of like opened up the door. So
Yeah.
I found that as a great story to share. Like, hey, like you think something's impossible, Dave? It's like so it's like why isn't anyone working on like world peace? It's like it should be something we should try to fix, right? Uh, but I think more importantly, it speaks to if you have purpose, you'll be able to attract people that are motivated and tied by that purpose. And it's not the purpose is not making money. It's like the end result is making money. The thing you do is the purpose, right? Which you wake up in the
Yes.
morning. No one is motivated by dollars, or very few people are motivated purely by the extrinsic reward of money, right? So it's a very fringe person. Like most people want to do good, want to do well. So I find that is a very, very salient point that is even more important today that like the stuff in the world's broken. So we need people that have drive and purpose to fix it.
Oh, indeed. There's a whole big cleanup that we've got to take on, and what I love about the story that you just shared with us is how it became exponential and how it inspired others, and that's where having a purpose, being purposeful, can have a multiplier effect. And if leaders embrace that approach, the return can be exponential. The return shouldn't be just about return on investment. It should be seen as return on purpose, return on this desire for impact, a return on collaborating with perhaps the unlikeliest of partners to create sustainable solutions in very creative and innovative ways, and to humanize those solutions through creativity, through storytelling. It will speak to more people, and as you and I have shared, and as you touched upon, that idea of what gets you up in the morning. Well, you and I both know that right now it's really a job seekers market, and so leaders have to look at how do they not only position, but how do they humanize their offering? How do they humanize their companies to demonstrate to the talent, the top-notch talent that they're trying to attract, how they can provide them with added value, with opportunities beyond the dollar sign? What are the growth opportunities? What are the opportunities to have impact? What are the values? Uh, is this company just about virtue signaling and, performative allyship and putting a little black square on Instagram? Or if you scratch below the surface, there's more substance to it. Uh, because it's hard to look away now with everything that we've been through since the beginning of the pandemic and all the the ripple effects, right, on the various layers of our societal challenges. So the same way that there's this concern of people who are really leaning into remote working and leaving urban centers to find more breathing room and greener spaces. um, there's a lot of people are doing some self introspection as to, if I'm going to get up every day and have to sit in front of a screen and endure video conference fatigue, at what price? What's in it for me?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good point. And then, and you mentioned, right, it's like where people now have a choice, like, because it seems like, many people are looking, or, have a lot of different options ahead of them.
Hmm.
So it's like, yeah, how do you able to provide something that's not just window dressing, that's an actual purpose, right? So even if it's a company that makes widgets, right? So it's like there's nothing inherently wrong with making widgets. But then if you think of like, okay, what's the community aspect? What's our CSR strategy? Like I said, it can't just be nice posts on Instagram. Like there has to be something there for people to to resonate with, right? So, and it
Yeah,
also goes with like you do good by doing well, but you do well by doing good. So it's like it's not
exactly.
the return on purpose. I'm going to steal that, right? It's like a lot of companies, a lot of investors have kind of woken up to this reality of like, well, if we force our companies, we're on the board, shareholders, etc. At the board, we're going to say we need to have proper ESG, we need to have proper CSR strategy. It's not because they're just doing it out of the kindness of their hearts, right? They're looking at the balance sheet, the projections. They're like, this is going to do. This is going to help us also and make us more money as a result. So the two things are not conflicting; they're actually related. Which I think that's what the smart investors have kind of woken up to this.
Yeah, for sure. And that's great. And it's great to see that things are evolving in that more, I guess, considerate, compassionate uh, aspect. Of course, there's still, we are talking about business, we are talking about profit making, but to weave in impact and purpose and to be solutions driven and to really embrace collaboration, again with sometimes the unlikeliest of partners. Sky's the limit in terms of what can really be born out of that.
And maybe to change gears a little bit, but not too much. I'm curious to pick your brain on your community involvement. So, like, so you have your film, which is it sounds like it's more than enough a day job, but then you also have a bunch of different community projects that you're involved with. So, how do you think about giving back? Do you have like a strategy? Is it do you accept everything? That's why you're like so spread out. I'm curious as to like what lens do you use to make a decision on how to be involved?
Yeah. So, you know, being engaged, not only in my work as a producer and strategist, but also being engaged in causes that I'm passionate about, really, that combination really fuels me. That's what gets me up and going in the morning. And so I'm really passionate about issues around creating opportunities for next generation talent. I'm really passionate about creating opportunities and spaces for greater equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I would honestly not be where I'm at today if it were not for the value of sisterhood, of being able to support on a strong network of women, of female leaders and influencers, and how we work towards having each other's backs and celebrating each other's successes and being there for one another in the more challenging times. So, that is really what informs the causes and the organizations that I support. Um, it really becomes important to me whenever I'm approached with these opportunities to look at, okay, how are we creating opportunities for emerging talent? How are we playing our role in terms of um, addressing the gaps in terms of gender equity? How are we going beyond the virtue signaling um, and genuinely creating inclusive spaces where all sorts of people from whatever background can feel like they belong and that they're being heard and being seen? And what's the role of creativity and storytelling um, in all of that? Because again, I know I'm going back to storytelling, but it remains the best way to humanize a cause. And so that's what informs the choices that I've made and the organizations that I'm involved with and that I support.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. What are you excited about, like in the future? Right, like we said, okay, there's a lot of bad stuff, but what way, what drives you right now? Like, what are you most excited about that's coming?
Wow. I think what I'm really excited about, I have to tell you, it's really how in the world of virtual reality, how that technology, the advancement of that technology, can be used to tell stories in an enhanced way. How immersive experiences can um, engage with various audiences and invite people to experience something that is unusual, unexpected, um, but that invites people to reflect upon the story that they're being embarked into, especially if that story and if the technology is being used to shine a light on a particular issue or a particular challenge. And so I'm excited about how, as this technology for, you know, XR, enhanced experiences and immersive experiences, how with the development of the technology around all of that, there are so many opportunities to drill down further into um, having more substance to the experience, right? So that it goes beyond being trippy and cool and like feeling like you're in a club. Although I'm sure that everybody misses the club scene right now because of the confinement. But it's like how to use that technology to, not only amaze, but to reflect and to learn. So looking at how this technology can be used to educate, to inspire, to engage.
Yeah, that's. I think that's a great way to end the conversation, Mahali. I'm like, I don't know what else to ask in terms of that could beat this. Maybe one micro question. Any thoughts on newer technologies that are coming, things like VR or AR? Any opinion?
Um, I think, I think I would just go back to, what I just said is that I think that what's wonderful about this technology is not only its potential from the tech side of things, it's its potential of how it offers up different avenues for storytellers create create their stories. And that's what I think is really exciting about it all, that you don't have to just rely on the quote unquote traditional ways of telling stories, of filmmaking, whatever genre we're looking at. This technology is there, and it would be great to see, more opportunities. I believe there are more opportunities to have creators learn more about how they can utilize AR, VR, create really impactful, immersive experiences, whether it be to like animate a public space or whether it be within, a headset. Um, I think that's what's exciting about those new gadgets, those new shiny objects.
Yeah, like you said, it's so early. I think another way to look at it is that it's just going to enable storytelling to like flourish,
Absolutely.
and I think that's what people are attracted to, good stories. So we'll just have many more good stories, right? So it'll be a fascinating way of like experiencing like different human experiences, and then like you said, the ones with purpose will resonate the most. I think that's maybe a great way to wrap up. Maybe final question, Mahalia, is where can people find out more about the work that you're doing, and if they want to reach out and connect?
Sure. So the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn, and if people want to learn more about ED Films, edfilms.net is our website URL. So
Cool, amazing.
thank you so much.
Don't mention it. Thank you.